How you do? Mr. C.F. Willie felt it would be rather unkind to present this review without a few words of friendly warning. We're about to review the Frankenstein film from 1931, when studios were creating universal horror monsters without reckoning upon God. Here we're gonna find why has this particular monster lived through the test of time and become part of pop culture. I think it will incite you. It may entertain you. It might even horrify you. So if any of you do not care to subject your nerves to such a strange, now is the chance to... Hi! Get over here! Get back to Google! Get back to Google! Now that's better. I mean, who does that? Walking out of a presentation like this is like me ordering a double quarter pounder at McDonald's and I decide to take off. And I don't even take the french prices! What? You think we're honest about you guys leaving? We're so honest about this at these presentation elections! So, if you would let me finish, I was gonna say, sit down, relax, enjoy your meal, and enjoy this video. And when it's done, you're gonna leave beautiful comments down below. You're gonna like, subscribe, and if you don't, well, we warned you. Piss off, Mickey Mouse. Cagatoni! Run the horse, monkey!
Pasito tum tum, pasito tum tum, pasito tum tum, pasito tum tum.
Hello, this is CF Willie. Welcome to a classic modern review. Frankenstein. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. What did they have in common? These start out with one of my favorite classic horror monsters of all time. Whether you were scared by these monsters or not, you gotta admit, they were a ton of fun. You see them on October, you see them in parodies, and on marketing sales that you can find anywhere. They stayed with you because they were so different from the normal men, but had a creepy mischief, launching them to popularity and started a horror genre to an older generation and a new generation of horror fans. And I'm here to take a look at one of those monsters, so let's begin with the woman that brought life to it, Mary Shelley. She was born in 1796 as the daughter of a writing philosopher and a feminist activist. After marrying poet Percy Shelley, she along with her friends competed to see who could write the scariest book ever. And from her experience with science evolving at that time, the countless of dead family members she witnessed, and the dreams that inspired her to write about bringing people back to life, yeah, I think she's got it. And that's when the book known as Frankenstein would see the light in the year 1818. It was the first science fiction book to be published, and it would shock readers for its controversial theme of science, God, nature, and a woman writing a thought-provoking story at such a young age? Now I know there was a short silent film that came out in 1910, but the one that catapulted to fame and glory was James Whale's version of Frankenstein. Out of all the bajillion Frankenstein movies, this is the one many overlook as the definitive, alongside with Bride of Frankenstein as a top contender. Even despite not following the book that closely, still, it's its own unique perspective that will help start the universal horror movies that blew the box office and terrorized the audience of that time. You gotta keep in mind, these were some of the first genre of blockbuster movies to come out and rule the box office. They had the cowboys in the 50s, now we have the superheroes of today. Back then, it was horror. You probably have heard the story countless of times. A mad scientist named Victor Frankenstein plays God when creating a hideous monster out of dead bodies, played by Boris Karloff. Then the monster is set loose and causes fear and havoc in the village, so the search begins to find the monster and kill it before it causes more destruction.
By this time, movies came out of the silent era and were exploiting the sound to their advantage, leading to one of the first famous quoted lines ever in cinema. And if you hear the whole quote, it is a chilling and bold statement.
It's alive! In the name of God, now I know what it feels like to be God.
Now in today's standards, the acting and characters look very simple. There's not enough explained motivation to why Frankenstein is obsessed on creating life. He's pretty much the mad scientist stereotype, but then realizes his mistakes and tries to turn away from them. There's a bit of comedy there with the father, who for some reason reminds me of, Herbert.
I mean, I don't want to sound cynical, but it was every time he would whistle every word that had an S in it.
Decent house, Frankenstein. You see how it is. 30 years' time, light is important. Our wedding. Experiments these must be. Soon settle that nonsense.
I mean, if you're going that way, I was just hoping he would have said something inappropriately perverted.
It's all my fault. Hit him on the sofa.
I'm gonna strap you on that sofa and I'm gonna smack you with a popsicle for being a naughty little boy tonight. Yeah, the good old way.
Never be a grandpa.
The other supporting characters are okay. Elizabeth is a one-dimensional damsel and not very interesting. Edward von Sloan, who would appear in several horror films, is fun to watch all the time. While the book takes place in a more Victorian era, this one is located in a spooky atmosphere that would set the tone for the classic horror with the graves, castles, mad scientists, deformed servants, monsters, screams, and thunder lightnings. Even though it doesn't hold up as scary as before, one thing that remains terrifying are its themes and ideas of man versus science. When trying to be like God and intervene with nature, it's a topical theme that holds more weight than ever now that man interferes with nature all the time. And it's the one monster that is closest to reality. Bringing people back to life with the use of electricity is not that far from reality as it looks. That brings me to the monster himself, Boris Karloff, who got into so many horror films after this one.
Originally, the role was given to Bela Lugosi for his successful role as Dracula, but then we turned it down because it was all makeup and not real acting, and he thought it was beneath him to wear makeup. Boy, would that haunt him for the rest of his life.
I gotta say, it is a haunting look. I mean, that's the whole reason they hire him, because of his face. I just love how they build up his intro very slowly until revealing his face, which you can't take your eyes off of him. While the makeup looks okay now, he is the most fascinating monster out of all of them. They approach him as not a monstrous brute that squashes everyone around him, but more as a child who doesn't know any better and wants to be loved. He's a creature with curiosities, but made with the same imperfections of man, maybe even too much imperfection. As his life grows to be endangered by man, he reacts out of defense in a violent manner as he starts getting out of control. If any scene describes him better than anything, it's this one with the little girl on the lake.
Now, I didn't see the movie when I was young, but I read about that scene, and for a kid to read that was scary as hell. So, what happens in that scene?
Well, after he escapes, he finds a little girl who doesn't get frightened of him. Then she starts to play with him, and he follows along. It's nice and sweet, the monster becomes more friendly, and it's the only time you see him to be happy. Until he ends up killing the girl because he thought it was part of the game. Back then, it was a big no-no to see a child getting killed. Even some countries would cut off the scene for how shocking it was back then. And today, it still gets a bit of a shock when you see the dead body. But going back to that scene, you can tell he had no intentions of killing her, he just didn't know what he was doing. When he finds out, he gets scared and runs off, so instead of coming out as a monster, he comes out as a victim that you can sympathize for. He was made to have life, only to become disposable. Even the fact that he has no name adds to his misery as he's casted away from society and even his own creator when it should have been a father and son relationship. Instead, the monster serves as a reflection of how imperfect humans are, and even at times, how ugly can we be when trying to mess with nature. Evolving to an advanced society is the hope for many, and not knowing what the future holds is a bit scary at times. Once we reach that point, how much of our humanity will be left? So much is argued whether we should clone people, stem cells, or create artificial life. The true terror of the movie is the unpredictability of how far is technology going to take over and replace humanity and emotions with cold, calculating facts. It serves as a warning of taking nature's purity and corrupting it. The fear of how far can we take knowledge? How far can we cross nature until it leads us to a path where we are so dehumanized that there is no point of return.
But going back to what I said earlier, did this really scare people up?
Is there anything here that is remotely worthy of a scare jump? I mean, take a look at this scene for example. I know people who are easily more scared than that. I wonder if people did actually jump from their seats screaming.
Okay, that's enough, damn it.
Alright.
Good dead man.
When it comes down to it, it is kind of a fun, classic horror movie. It sets itself in a world of monsters and makeup that even those that are not familiar with it could find the interest. It's been parodied to death, and you still see them in specials and people dressing up every October. It's a tale that has become part of pop culture and has more relevance for its themes of man playing God. If you're a fan of the book, you're probably not going to like this one. It's not the most faithful, but as a horror fan, it works as its own unique interpretation of the book. It made Boris Karloff into a star of horror in the 30s, and it helped create a new genre of movies. I can see why some parts could be scary at that time. The girl on the lake, the monster scream when they're burning the windmill down, and its warning message. If you find yourself the time, you can go see how this version of Frankenstein is still alive more than ever. I give it a 7 out of 10 stars.
So, what do you thought on the movie? Did you like it? Did you not like it? I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. You can leave your comments down below, like, subscribe, and what will be some movies you'd like me to review later? Well guys, tune in next time because I'll be reviewing Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. So for now, that's it for today. Ciao.